right. Welcome to Sasquatch and Spirituality, everyone. I'm your host, Thomas. And tonight, my guest will be Preston Nichols from the state of New York, and we have a whole lot of things to discuss. Mr. Nichols, are you there?
Yep.
All right.
I'm here.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the floor at this time. Let you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody about yourself, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of go from there. How about that?
Okay. You've already said I'm Preston Nichols, author of the Montauk Project series. By trade, I'm an electrical engineer and a quantum electronics engineer. I have a bachelor in electrical engineering, a master in electrophysics, and a PhD in quantum electrodynamics, as well as being a scientist. And no, I don't build rockets. But besides being a scientist, I'm also very interested in metaphysical stuff, being that metaphysics is one of the best sources of information on quantum dynamics you can find. And I've also, gone into a very deep metaphysical research through most of my life, starting in the late 60s with studies of extrasensory perception and things that go bump in the nights. I've done my share of ghost busting and, that sort of thing. And I found myself involved in this research project carried on by the federal government, we believe. We're not totally sure, but it was done on a federal military base out at Montauk Point, New York, known as Camp Hero, or the Montauk Air Force Station. And there was a carry-on from the Philadelphia experiment and development of stealth technology to where we were attempting to influence the mind of people using electromagnetics, mainly in the UHF region around 70 centimeters or 435 megahertz, and had some degree of success with that. But it evolved eventually into a time device. The device we built really was nothing but a large mind amplifier. It had input sensors, we call it the Montauk chair in the book series, and a adept, a psychic, would lay in that chair, go into a deep trance. And we had sensors and technology would pick up thoughts. We had a computer that would align the thoughts, for want of better words, and then this huge UHF transmitter, which actually evolved into a traveling beam amplifier that sort of resembled a particle accelerator, and that's where we got the final power to bend space and time. We literally built a machine that if the sensitive in the chair could think of a different space and time, it would essentially open a wormhole from the present to that space and time. And from that, many different projects ensued, from looking to see what was on Mars to, electromagnetic spying, and, it just goes on and on and on. And I was privy to some of it, but not all of it.
When you say that they mind control, is it something that they can do on a very mass level or individual level?
They were looking for what we called the universal signature, which would be a frequency transform that all the human beings would recognize being transmitted to them. We never got the universal signature, but it was quite effective on a single base, a single person. You could target a single person and virtually make that person do anything you want.
Okay. And so if they're not aware of their own thoughts or aware that those thoughts coming in don't belong to them, there's really no way that they can discern between the mind control aspect of it and their own thoughts. Is that correct, or am I just wildly guessing? Or?
Well, that aspect would vary depending upon the person. Some of the people realized they were being influenced from outside, and some of the people thought it was their own thoughts purely.
Okay. So, according to Mr. Moon that I've had on the show, he's saying that there's still something going on out there on Long Island. Are you aware of anything that's still going on there?
Well, the last time I was there was 2000, and I did detect at Montauk Point 400 hertz power fields, coming from 400 hertz power, which is military-type power, and there's absolutely no reason for there to be any 400 hertz power out at Montauk Point. So that tells me that they're still using the underground facility, which had a lot of 400 hertz power in it, like almost any military base has. Also, 400 hertz power is aircraft power. That's how you can make an aircraft radar so the plane can get off the ground with the thing. The transformers are smaller and lighter.
Okay. Now, can you tell us some more about the Montauk project? Tell us, the Philadelphia experiment, start there and kind of go forward, because I know Mr. Moon was saying the energy that was developed there echoes back on itself every 20 years.
Yes, this is true.
Okay, can you expand on that a little bit?
World War II, there was an attempt to make ships at sea and airplanes invisible to radar. The idea was they would build an electromagnetic bottle around the aircraft that would continue the radar signal around the craft and continue it in the same direction so there'd be no reflection. And basically they built a quantum wave generator, if you want to call it that. And it did connect through space and time to Montauk Point in 1983, August 12th. And we believe it was done August 12th in 1943. And there was an interim project done somewhere around Islip, Long Island, in 1963. There appears to be some sort of a peak in energies, almost like a biorhythm cycle, that the Earth has every 20 years, based upon 43, 63, 83, 2003, and so on.
Okay.
And exactly what that is, I don't know. It may have something to do with the rotation of the molten core.
It's interesting that there's Peter was saying that the blackout that occurred in the New England states and into Canada in 2003 happened in conjunction with the timing of the Philadelphia experiment, August of 2003. Do you have any insight on that?
Me personally, no. All I know is I was taken to the Inwood power coupling between the Long Island power and the New York City power, and there was definitely evidence that there was a massive power surge that came on to Long Island that literally melted some of those big power buses in that interconnect substation. But whether that had anything to do with the biocycle, I don't know.
Okay, and he was also talking about how the project, what happened in 1983 there at Montauk. Can you tell us anything about that and what occurred that time?
You mean the crater?
Yes.
Okay. There was a whole group of us that was working on the project that we had decided the project was going in a bad direction. It was going into a direction of world domination, which a bunch of us didn't want to see. Since we had built a mine amplifier that could literally generate anything that a person in the chair could think of, literally bring solid objects out of the background ethers and all sorts of amazing stuff. We decided, let's scare the bejesus out of the power group that's running the project and bring this creature out of the id of a man by the name of Duncan Cameron. He was in the chair. I went over, I turned on the intercom to the chair room and said the time is now. And that's when he brought up this creature that was about 10, 20 feet tall, depending upon how much brown squishy stuff you had in your shorts. And this critter literally destroyed parts of the base. Didn't seem to hurt anyone, any person. But it was going after the buildings, and it was just making menacing gestures and noises. And I had to literally go into the transmitter building at gunpoint and shut down that transmitter. Because the power was cut, and it had gotten into a quantum energy mode where you cut the power and the thing still was running. I had to literally cut the transmitter apart. And then the critter faded back into the background, and it's been sighted there many, many times. There's a picture of it in the book Montauk Project Experiments in Time. A photographer friend of mine was out there with just snapping pictures, and we saw this thing that looked like a Sasquatch at a distance. And then I have a videotape where I actually have the thing moving very fast. It's moving up and down this hill very fast. You'll see it when you go there, but the video camera picked it up.
Okay. Interesting. Now, if I understand correctly, you weren't aware that you had, you weren't aware that you had worked at the Montauk Project when you first started working there. Am I correct in that? Am I wording that correctly? Okay.
Well, the utmost, the highest security on something like this is when the workers leave the plant. They don't remember anything. Therefore, they can't spill the beans, so to speak.
Okay.
And they played that game with me as well.
So, how did you learn that you had actually worked there?
Well, there was a number of levels. I would go to what's called ham fests, or amateur radio flea markets and swap meets. And I'd run into people that would say to me, "You remember me?" "No, I don't remember you." "Well, you and I worked together on the Montauk Air Force Base." I said, "Huh? What?" And then my cousin married a guy who swore on a stack of Bibles that I was his boss. He was in the Air Force, and I was his boss at the Montauk Air Force Base. Which was, huh? And then finally, I was working on a Delta antenna design on the roof of my personal laboratory, and I had to buzz out windings in the loop, and it made me pass out, and when I woke up, I had two memory lines for the same time. One was, working at the company in Deer Park, and the other was working out at Montauk Point, and I thought I'd lost it at that point. At that point, I was ready for the rubber room. Some people think I'm still ready for the rubber room. But either way, I thought I'd lost it until I finally pulled it all together, realized that these people did see me at Montauk, and that I'd lived some sort of an oddball double life based upon quantum activity and time activity.
What memories were you able to recall most of your memories from working there that they had erased or reprogrammed, whatever you'd like to call that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Someone told me you had an incident with a reptilian. Was it there at Montauk or somewhere else?
No, it was there at Montauk.
Do you mind saying anything about that?
Well, I had an office in the transmitter building.